I mean, it's so funny. I mean, I probably spend way too much time looking at funny things on that, and that
Yes.
you're right because some of the overseas global communities are so funny. I love We Rate Dogs, and of course, Doggist. That's also something I really look forward to, and it's really fun as well. So I have a question. So what made Rain and Blue the foster fail among 60? Did you say
I
60?
I think it's 63. I'm going to have to recount, but I
60.
think it's 63
Okay.
puppies. But yes, I knew you were going to ask that. I was thinking about that before. So Little Blue was my first foster fail. So at the time, I was looking after the Floof, who's like a big, chunky chow chow puppy. Reggie, who's this beautiful soul. We called him Reggie because he looks like a Rhodesian Ridgeback, and he definitely wasn't
Oh,
one. He was just a beautiful Tongao. But we called him Reggie. Then we had little Luke, who was this nervous little Tongao, super cute. We had those three already at home, and I saw a post from Hong Kong Dog Rescue that two little dogs that they thought were probably border collie mix needed short-term foster. One had a really bad leg, was severely injured, and another one that was looked to be okay. And I reached out saying, look, I know I've already got three. I might not be ideal for taking on a medical case, but I've got space. I'd love to look after what was called Mindy and Milo as well. And Hong Kong Dog Rescue, they're amazing. And they were like, oh my gosh, Lyndsay, that would be fantastic if you can come get them. So I rush over. At the time, it was on Elgin Street, and I pick up these two gorgeous little dogs. Now, Milo, the male, black and white, I immediately messaged my best friend and said, I've got your second dog. I've just found him. They already had a dog called Pippa, and they were in the market for looking for a brother for her. And I was like, it's him. Like, he's gorgeous. I can't see any behavioral issues of any kind. Like, come and meet him. I'm bringing him home right now. The other dog, Mindy, was she had like a really bad leg. You could see she wasn't using it at all. It was all hunched up, and she was just gorgeous. And I was like, oh gosh, she's quite special. So over the next few days, spending time with all these dogs and spending time with Mindy, I realized I had another friend who was looking for a dog who would love her. And I couldn't bring myself to message her. I couldn't do it. I was like, I don't want to say that I've got your dog because I couldn't do it. And Nick, my partner, was like, Lyndsay, what's going on? Like, why her? What's different? I was like, I don't know. I don't know what it is. I cannot say that I can give it to someone else. And at the time we were preparing for her surgery. She had this really bad leg, and we were hoping to be able to straighten it and get it to use. We were going to pin it and go through a good 6 months of rehab. And as I was driving to the surgery, driving to Acorn Vets, I realized I didn't want her going to surgery not having a home. So oh my gosh, I'm getting upset. I called HKDR, say like, I'm adopting her. I don't want her going through surgery not knowing she doesn't have a home on the other side. So no matter what happens in surgery, whether she comes out with 3 legs or 4, she's going to come home with me. And the surgery went really, really well. We did in the end decide to amputate. So she is a tripod. So she came out with just her 3 legs. But her recovery was amazing. It's inspiring how quickly they can recover from these major surgeries. And she came home, and I was like, "That's it. You're not going anywhere." And so she recovered with me. She grew up with me, and she was my first keeper. And honestly, I don't know what it was about her, but I couldn't say goodbye to her. I couldn't do it. So that's Little Blue. And then about 4 months later, we were fostering again. Gosh, we had a big household. We had Jill, Jax, and Johnny were with us. We had a big poodle called Mac staying with us. We had Bruno and Sandro, 2 Tongaos staying with us. Big, busy house. And Little Blue would not leave Jill alone. She was constantly playing with her, constantly nagging her, constantly licking her eyes, cleaning her ears, just always with her. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's chosen her dog. Like, this is clearly her
oh,
sister. So actually, that was Blue's decision to keep Jill, and Jill became Rain. It
Rain.
was 10 hours of black rain on the day that we decided to keep her. So I was like, well, we're going to have to call her Rain. So that's how those two ended up being keepers out of a very, very large pool of wonderful dogs.
Oh, that's a wonderful story. They always say they chose you, and apparently dogs choose their own dog as well. Then there you
Yeah,
go.
they absolutely do.
We spoke about breed, and sort of you grew up in the UK, right? And then we spoke about breeder as well. And we have friends that have bought dogs and are very specific about breed. And I know you're quite passionate about that subject as well. And we talked about being very inclusive on your channel and how we communicate. Would you like to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, of course, I'm a supporter of Adopt, Don't Shop. And I think kind of I can pretty clearly draw a line in the sand for me saying I won't buy a dog. I'm always going to, throughout the rest of my life, I'm always going to be adopting. I know a lot of people still feel quite strongly about purchasing a dog and they have their reasons. Now, I do think a lot of those reasons are maybe outdated. They're maybe misguided. I think then maybe it's a lack of education. It's a lack of awareness of the reality of what a dog needs and what a breed is and the breed's needs. And also when a dog doesn't have a breed, their reality as well. So I think a lot of that decision-making, driving, purchasing dogs is based on maybe ill-informed information. So I think for me, I like to push the message of researching a dog for you. I think when someone is thinking of buying a dog, I'm like, do your research. Like, do your research into what your lifestyle is, or rather, be aware of what lifestyle, and do the proper research into the character of dogs you need. And then, of course, do your research into proper breeders, because unfortunately there is a plethora of awful breeding practices, and some people would argue that no breeding practices is moral. I think kind of there's a big spectrum there. I'm not going to get into that debate. But I think for me, the strongest message is, as part of that research, go to a shelter, go to multiple shelters. If you're going to do a 15-year commitment with an animal, it's like, and don't just do some internet searching and Googling, go to a shelter and see some dogs. And maybe, hopefully, you'll find your best friend in the shelter down the road. I think kind of the worst case scenario, you waste a couple of hours at a shelter and don't find your best friend. But why would you go and purchase an animal, maybe from overseas, maybe that you haven't met before, based on not having actually seen a dog in real life? I think kind of, so my message absolutely is adopt, don't shop. But if you're going to go down that route of purchasing a dog, do your homework. And as part of that homework, meet some dogs and see if maybe the shelter can fill that need for you. And I'm willing to bet the majority of the time the shelters will have a dog or multiple dogs that would tick every box you're actually looking for. They might not have that breed, they might not have that DNA stamp, but I think kind of through that research, hopefully through that kind of that journey of discovery, you'll realize actually the DNA isn't that big a deal, and actually it's the loyalty and the love of that dog that you're looking for. So I think that's, for me, that's my biggest message.
I couldn't agree more, because I think some people have very specific idea. Oh, I like teacup poodle or whatever, very, very specific, and because the way they look. But I think with the ease of able to procure a pet very easily at low cost from China, Taobao, at least from my perspective, we're seeing a lot of abandonment, because I think, like you said, at least 15 years, if not more. And then people realize, oh, it costs a lot to take them to the vet, and then they get abandoned. So unfortunately, the abandonment issue is getting worse. Cats as well, especially with the SPCA. But I think, if possible, just look around all the shelters. Golden Retriever, Poodle, Border Collie, Husky, you name it, you will be able to find one. And often, because they have been abandoned or have been domesticated, they're actually, going to be very chill, and maybe, in the middle of their life, 5 or 7 years old, they could be much more stable as well. So I couldn't agree more. But yes, adopt, don't shop. I definitely didn't realize a 24-kilo grow to a 35-kilo. I did know about Tongao, but apparently I got an extra large. So
You got the big ones. There's actually there was one dog I actually did want to mention on that. So during my fostering, almost all dogs were Tongaos or mixed breed of some kind. I had one dog who was definitely a pure breed, or rather close to a pure breed, and he was my only real experience of an ex-breeder dog or a pet shop dog. So he's called Mac, and I got the call from Hong Kong Dog Rescue saying, we've got someone who's giving up their dog. Can you go and get him? He's round the corner from where I lived in Psycho. And I was, absolutely, we'll go get him. So I was on the Macklehose Trail at the time hiking. So I decided we'll call the dog Mac for Macklehose. So I he was lovely. So he turned up, and there's this giant poodle. He was a standard poodle, but he was already about 16, 18 kilos. So he was standing at hip height. He was about 6 months old. And this genuinely lovely couple kind of brought him down saying, oh yeah, we can't keep him. Now they did come up with a myriad of different reasons, none of which quite made sense, but it was like, okay. And I'm going to read between the lines and make an assumption here that I think they purchased him on the internet. And I think they purchased a standard poodle. Now, because of the plethora of poodles we have in Hong Kong, I think a lot of people think a poodle is about 4 kilos. A standard poodle is 25 kilos. They're large dogs. So my guess, and again, I don't know if I'm right, but my guess is that they purchased a standard poodle online and expecting this little thing to turn up, and a very large dog arrived. Because they'd only had him for 2 to 3 days when they decided to surrender him. So I picked up Mac, and he's this beautiful dog. Of course, he was nervous. All dogs, when they first get picked up by a complete stranger, are a little bit nervous. He was a bit nervous, and I took him home. I was like, oh, this is probably the biggest puppy I've dealt with. He was 16 kilos. And it's my first breed. So I was kind of excited to see, like, what's the difference between a Tongao and a breed. And honestly, I was horrified. He was a 6-month-old dog. His teeth were basically rotten because he's obviously been on a diet of soft food for his entire life. So his teeth were awful. I took him outside and he ducked because I don't think he'd ever been outside before. So he didn't know where the ceiling was. He didn't know how to use the stairs. He didn't know what grass was. Grass completely panicked him. He didn't understand. He was moving his paws like this is a weird sensation for him. He'd trained himself to go to the toilet inside. So even though we had him outside for hours playing in the garden, the moment I brought him inside, he relieved himself. And I was like, oh my goodness, kind of this dog has spent presumably 6 months in a cage, maybe in a factory somewhere, 6 months inside. And all these behaviors I've been trained into this poor animal. And so when people are buying, they think they're buying this perfect kind of picture perfect poodle from a beautiful environment. It's like, you're not. You're getting this wreck of a dog who doesn't know how to be a dog. Now, thankfully, Mac was a brilliant animal. He bounced back so quickly. Within 2 to 3 weeks, he was behaving like a completely normal 6-month-old puppy, and he was bouncing off the walls. He had so much energy. We got him lead walking. We got him in the water. There's actually some videos on my Instagram of his first time in the sea, him getting a bit confused, like what's going on. And he got adopted by just a fantastic family out inside Kung who are going to give him hours and hours of exercise every day. They have another dog similar to Ronnie, and a bigger mongrel. And it's, again, a happy story. But I think the reason I brought Mac up was, of all the pups that I fostered, he was the one that came with baggage. He was the one that came with potential behavior issues. And his background was pet shop, was breeder. Again, I'm making some guesses here. But that's where he came from. So kind of for me, that was the biggest and most stark, obvious revelation of being in a shelter doesn't necessarily mean you've got any baggage, but coming from a pet shop or coming from a breeder, God knows the experiences his parents, his mum, his poor mother and dad, presumably, are going through, his siblings as well. And it was, for me, it was a reaffirmation of why we should support the adopt, don't shop ethos, and just kind of a very stark reminder of how bad things could be or could have been for poor Mac. But thankfully a happy story in the end.